Superhero archetypes. You're all familiar with at least 3. The street level hero, the person who works on the ground, he's very much in tune with the people. Daredevil, jumping across rooftops, swinging across skylines, and being a general nuisance, to put it lightly, for the criminal underworld. They're very easy to relate to. They deal with human problems and they usually work very human jobs. Then we have the cosmic character, somebody who is larger than life, stronger than the average man, 10 times, 100 times over, and is usually not bound by the Earth. In fact, they're usually spacebound, going across the cosmos, visiting different stars, and all in all, just saving the universe from very powerful threats. And maybe if you're feeling a bit Sunday-pilled, HBO Max everybody, lanterns, you might have a green ring on your finger. And finally, we have the supernatural or magic character. And with magic, there's usually tiers. There's levels to this, mainly because there's different points of proficiency, and the amount of magic a character can have changes depending on who the person really is. Some characters are born with said power. They were part of a race that was more proficient. Then we have others who have artifacts or something in their blood, or they have more spells in their arsenal. In DC, there's actually an archetype system where there's different classes and subclasses that goes all the way from, say, a sorcerer or a magician all the way up to an archmage or a judge. But these levels aren't necessarily contained only within magic, because if you look at street tiers, there are different levels there. We got our Hawkeyes, then we go to our Daredevils or Captain Americas, then we go to our Spider-Mans or Luke Cages or Iron Fists. But the cosmic characters, all of them are just overpowered. Like, I don't know what to say. No matter who you are, they're gonna have some sort of hacks, they're gonna have some crazy feat in their catalog. And all of this is nice and all, but most of us already know this. Right now, I'm just trying to get all of our bases covered here so you know what we're dealing with. But what if I told you there was a secret fourth option? One that ended up being my personal favorite, and one that I like to call hybrid characters. How would I classify these characters? Well, you're about to find out. But before we get started, I got you there. Remember to like, comment, subscribe, and turn on post notifications so you know when a new video goes live. We're on our way to 50K. We're almost there. As I said before, one more final push. But what is this so-called legendary hybrid character? Somebody that I see not exactly above the rest, but sits in a different tier all into themselves. What would make them worthy to be separated from the other 3? When it comes to me, it's exactly in the name. Hybrid. Putting things together. If we were going to do a painting, this is going to be some mixed media stuff. We're getting things all together and making something new out of it. And while there are certain characters that have went into different genres or forms of storytelling throughout the years, maybe even in different runs very close by here and there, maybe 1 or 2, the characters I'm talking about jump between these shifts very seamlessly and very frequently. These are characters who are, for example, a cosmic street tier. They do 2 different things. Or maybe a cosmic supernatural character. Or maybe the legendary Pokemon itself, the 3-in-1. And they go through all of these different archetypes periodically. Yeah, there might have been a situation where Daredevil fought a dragon with a giant sword and became a cosmic hero, but that's a 1 in a million situation. And even if there was a whole cosmic Daredevil run, that is never going to be the norm. He's always going to go back to what he normally is. And same with the supernatural. I know there's going to be some people who try to argue there are some supernatural Daredevil runs, but I don't really care when, say, there's like the Beast involved, or I don't know, something weird from the 90s, or the god-awful Ahmed run where the 7 deadly sins appeared, because I guess, you know, that's biblical. That kind of makes sense, but for most people, they wouldn't consider Daredevil a supernatural character. In fact, when he goes supernatural, that's usually when his stories go for the worst. His worst stories are when he's in that mode. When he's in that bag is when he's more on the ground, boots on the ground, fighting with his billy clubs and doing some courtroom drama. But other characters, they can literally do whatever they want. They're nice like that, but that could have only been done, it could have only happened if they were set up this way from the start. It has to be built into their DNA. If it's not, it is going to be very hard to change what a character can be. For an example of a hybrid character, because I know a lot of you want me to snap back to it, let's use Batman. And I think the reason why he became a hybridized character, where it stemmed from, was the Silver Age. In the 50s, this is an era that a lot of people like to dog on, but it's foundational for Batman as a whole. It created a lighter version of the character who was willing to basically be put in random situations like going into space, being on a planet where he gets superpowers, fighting this weird alien rainbow monster thing that turns him into gobbledygook, fighting a werewolf, going after ghosts, and fighting the Joker. But that Joker part usually happens later on in the 70s. That's when he would usually fight his normal rogues gallery like Two-Face, Penguin, and the lot. But these things are so wrapped into Batman to the point that I'm seeing it right now in LEGO Batman Legacy of the Dark Knight, where it shows you once again that Batman could be adapted for a more childlike medium despite a couple of years prior being in very mature and serious media like the Batman, the Penguin, and even in this year's rated R film, Clayface is about to be adapted for Halloween as a horror movie. Batman is one of, if not the most flexible character of the 21st century. He's able to be molded for so many different things that it's quite absurd. He doesn't ever feel like he stands out anywhere, despite only being a human, even though that does have some pretty interesting connotations when you put that human label on anything in a superhero setting. Of course, he's physically stronger and better than a normal person, but you know, my idea still stands. He's not flying. He's not shooting webs out of his hands. He's just throwing things that he paid his money for. Yet it's still perfectly understandable why he's going up against a 10-foot Goliath in a Bat-mech armor. All of this really is just a wonderful world that DC created. If we were going to go back to a checklist on our 3 different archetypes, street level, that is pretty self-explanatory. A lot of the media that you see right now on the big screen for Batman, it's more easily digestible, making it street level, so you have more of that relatable feel. It feels more realistic. But then, we can go cosmic. He very much is a cosmic character as well because he's on the Justice League. We see him go off-world monthly. So even if that isn't a regular occurrence in his main comics because it's usually street level, you'll always see him deal with bigger threats. And I love seeing him do that too. And why it fits so well in these settings is because we get to see more of his intelligence. Usually we see it from a detective perspective when he's solving crimes, but when he's fighting characters that are way stronger than himself, he's automatically the underdog when usually he is the top dog in any city that he goes to. So what does that mean? He has to outsmart them. He has to use his intelligence, his battle IQ, his tactical mind, and everything that he's learned to either beat these villains, provide proper intel for other heroes to beat said villains, or to even come to a stalemate. Like one of my favorite moments of all time with Darkseid on Apocalypse, where Batman tells him, "I'm about to blow up this entire planet using your health spores that I just hacked if you don't let Supergirl out of your thrall." This shows us a character with a lot of ingenuity who's able to get out of these tough spots on his own in a believable way. And then there's the supernatural aspect. Batman and the supernatural goes together like cookies and cream. Of course, we have Barbados and a bunch of villains with different supernatural abilities here and there. The horror aspect of the character, whether that's through actual scares, just ambiance, or through body horror, all of that is a part of him. If we were to go through the past 20 years of Batman comics, Morrison did it. Even Snyder did it in certain one-offs here and there, tiny story arcs, and then recently with Ram V's Detective Comics, it is a masterclass in weaving in all of the different supernatural pieces of Batman's lore, creating new ones, and bringing everything together into one succinct format that feels like a bunch of puzzle pieces coming together to give us one whole picture. A sequel to Morrison's very acclaimed and influential Batman run that just feels like the little bow that needed to be placed on the Batman mythos in the 2020s. And I'm happy to say that even now, they still know how to mix Batman and the supernatural, and they're able to do it with such efficiency and ease because, once again, it was in his DNA. Some of his first enemies is literally a vampire and a bunch of monster men. What other foundation would Batman ever need? He was covered from the start. But how about another character? What is another 3-in-1 character? Just so you guys understand what I'm talking about. But before I give you a name, tell me a character that you think is a 3-in-1 and why they work so well as a 3-in-1 hybrid. But for me, it is the Incredible Hulk. The Hulk is somebody that you don't exactly see as a street-level hero, but even in something like Immortal Hulk, we see him go after criminals that harm children, and it felt natural. The guy who could flip the earth into 2 pieces can somehow come off as a vigilante despite being like 7 feet tall, and it made sense. Usually in normal Hulk storylines, we see him as the Savage Hulk personality, a little bit like a childlike version who's running away from the military, and he is usually earthbound. And how he transformed is through the Gamma Bomb, which was something that was usually seen as some sort of super science. Everything was regulated to Earth, with him fighting humans, robots, big monsters, or cosmic level threats in big events, and of course his arch enemies, who are usually pretty darn powerful themselves. But then we see something like World War Hulk or Planet Hulk, where he goes off-world, comes back, and beats up everybody for what they did to him. He has an entire planetary arc. He has entire bits of his lore constructed around the cosmic nature of this one area. Sakaar, his son being born, an alien supporting cast being made, and sometimes on and off again, we have to talk about this, his beef and buddy-buddy system with Thor, which leads him into bigger adventures. To the one-off random villain that comes in his run that could literally destroy the planet, if not the entire universe, that he has to take down himself. And then, after Immortal Hulk, everything has been entrenched in the supernatural, in that magical nature. The beings that he's fighting come from the dawn of existence, who have been born from the darkness at the very beginning. His literal essence was created from hell. Gamma energy is hell magic energy technically. The green door as a concept of him going to hell as a gamma user, that being a natural phenomenon, to then having to go through that green door to be resurrected and brought somewhere on Earth. To the very crazy transformations he has. To the connection to the one below all, who is in effect cosmic and magical itself. And how these things really do blend together very easily, especially, you know, him being a hybrid character. What I said makes sense, guys. Cosmic and supernatural, those two things, if we look at it as well, are only 2 ticks apart from each other, and usually, deities and beings from both sides interact very frequently, to the point where you don't even know where the line is blurred. So from that instance, these 2 archetypes from now on are going to be a huge part of the character. And street level, well, you know, the most dubious part of this, and well, he's always gonna have an adaptation, maybe even now or in the next comic run, live action or otherwise, where he's going to be on the run. He's going to be just Bruce Banner fighting for his life. He's gonna be trying to mentor or help some sort of young kid going through a similar situation. There's always going to be that human interaction, that connection that we see from street level injected into his stories. And that's exactly what makes Hulk such a fascinating, interesting, and top 3, maybe top 5 at most character in Marvel. He can make everything work, and it's gonna stay this way for decades. And now for our third 3-in-1. Nah, I'm joking, you couldn't make me do it, but these guys aren't as common as it seems. These 2 in particular are kind of outliers. There are a couple more that you guys could list out in the comments, but the ones that are more likely are the ones that are in 2s. They're in 2s, and I think DC is a lot more prevalent with this, and that is the cosmic street tier that I probably mentioned earlier. These are your Supermen, your Flash, your sometimes Green Lantern, but we don't really count them that much, your Shazams, Captain Marvel. These are characters who have their own city to look after, so by definition, they're street level, but their power level is cosmic. The threats that they're fighting can invade the planet or just destroy the entire Milky Way galaxy. A lot of the times, these characters also go off-world for different adventures. They have 2 different sets of stories: on-planet stories and off-planet stories. Superman will be fighting Intergang one moment Lex Luthor, who's literally a business mogul who is very corrupt and owns half, if not 70 to 90% of the city. And then he goes to fighting Brainiac, somebody who's trying to bottle cities, even on Earth itself, to bring it in for his intelligence collection and to really just examine and observe Kryptonians themselves. So Superman is seen as a test subject to Brainiac. That's the reason why he comes to Earth a lot. Of course, we have Zarnians being connected to Superman, more alien connections being built here, the New Gods mythology with New Genesis and Apocalypse and Highfather and Darkseid and Orion and Mr. Miracle, and I can go on and on and on, who are very connected to Superman themselves because they first appeared in Superman-related media before branching out into their own spin-off. That's what these guys are. I'm sorry to say it, but as much as I love the New Gods, they're a spin-off out of Superman. There is a deep connection there, and that only builds onto Superman's mythology even more. I will acknowledge new gods are their own thing now, but it came from somewhere, and these two are very connected. To even the Warworld planet that recently gave us a really interesting saga by Philip Kennedy Johnson, where Clark goes full gladiatorial, something that he has done in the past, yes, but this time to liberate the entire planet. And if you don't know what Warworld is, it's run by Mongol, who is a conqueror, and the planet itself has a bunch of slaves that he's taken from his conquests who fight for his amusement. And the planet has a bunch of crazy lasers and tech on it. Think of it like the DC version of the Death Star, so a lot of cool stories can happen here. And this led to Superman being kind of out of commission when it came to Earth, so John took over as the main Superman for basically a year. He was missing for that amount of time, and that's what I love about these characters. They can be dealing with real-world issues that hit at your heartstrings, the oppression of people less fortunate than us, and the messages that need to be sent to the youth of today. That is what Superman is at the end of today. But then you'll see him in some very big situations that gets your blood boiling, that gets you hyped in a way that only cosmic, big spectacle blockbuster adventures could ever really get you. Superman is a hero in two flavors, and yes, I'm thinking about ice cream analogies, but what if I wanted to quickly move there, get my fill, and then come back here? Well, yes, that's my transition. The Flash, here is where he comes in, and his main power, as all of you know, is super speed. But how do we really work with that in a street-level setting? Well, we have him protect two twin neighboring cities connected by one bridge that was recreated by the Flash himself. Central City on one side and Keystone on the other. And while he might be quadrillion and kabillion times faster than the speed of light, Superman is as well, what makes the Flash so interesting is his relationship with his villains. The fact that his villains aren't even really bad guys per se. Well, they are, they do kill people, and they do things here and there that are very interesting to say the very least, but they do have a strict moral code, lines they won't cross, and if anybody in their rogues ever does anything like that, they will get excommunicated or killed. They have boundaries that they won't cross, and that relationship and the back and forth they have with the Flash, whether that's Barry Allen or better yet, Wally West, is always a nice time because you get to see that there's multiple sides of different people. There's complex characters that are doing things not for the sake of hurting people, but for the sake of having their entire group get better. They're not leaving their day ones, they're trying to bring everybody up together, and unfortunately the way they're trying to do it is through crime. And honestly, you'd think they'd be able to get a really good job because of their technical know-how that they have, being able to create a freeze gun or a fire gun, but sometimes it's really hard. You won't get scouted. There's other people that can do exactly what you're doing, but better. So what do you have to do? You gotta dress up a little bit, turn into a clown, get some drip on, and try to rob your nearest bank on some Ocean's 11 type beat, and that's what makes Flash so enjoyable, and his world. It's like a heist movie 24/7 with villains that are pretty honorable, flashy, and enjoyable as the main character himself. I know this does lead to a lot of people saying, how does he even lose to these characters though? Is he a bum? Normally, he doesn't lose to them. Well, Barry, he's a bit fascinating, but we let it slide. Literally, he goes across the ice like a banana peel from Mario. But what I want to say here is that he doesn't really fight them, both Barry and Wally. He wants to talk to them, and when he does go after them, he's not in speed mode all the time. He's not slowing everything down. He's not in flash time. He's just doing his normal jogging stuff. He's not gonna go all out unless they do something that's gonna trigger him and get his blood boiling. But most characters, if you're not a speedster, are gonna do that. Sometimes though, if I am gonna be honest, they're gonna tweak a little bit and create a tornado that does some serious damage to the city, but that's the moment when Flash knows he has to tee up. And that moment in and of itself is just another big distraction to rob a bank. Flash knows this. And in general, the Flash does have somewhat of a pseudo ADHD. That's what the Speed Force gives you. You're going to be moving all the time, you're going to be a little bit fidgety, and you're not always going to be thinking about the right thing. You have to learn how to slow down. Once he goes in speed mode, everything slows down to the moment where it just feels unbearable to live, to breathe, to count every breath that you take by the sounds of each inhalation, decibel by decibel. It hurts. So that's why he's gonna turn it off for a little bit and, go with the flow. He's always gonna move quick, but not exactly in that slow mode. He doesn't want to be in that mode unless he has to. The only people he really has to turn it on for are speedsters, and those same speedsters are universe or multiverse defying threats that would cause him to go all out. He's never going all out until he's in these moments. If you don't have a trail behind you of lightning and just a blur of color, there's no reason for him to do all that. That's why sometimes he might trip on some ice. I'm giving him a bit of an out here because he's really not taking it fully seriously. At the end of the day, he's really just trying to talk them down. If they shoot at him, that's the worst case scenario. But a lot of the times, he's able to come to a conclusion, all the while being in two places at the same time, at least in his brain, running towards the source of all creation and dealing with threats there, because that's also another part of his day. He's been seen dealing with the negative speed force that's been used as a poison to kill time itself. What does that even mean? I don't know, it gets very abstract in the Flash bin, to being in a race with a bunch of different gambler gods to save planet Earth. Gods, mind you, that could instantly teleport. So what do? You have to absorb all the kinetic energy of Earth to win while still somewhat in your rookie years. So having this extra dimensional Speed Force entity chasing you to the ends of existence to the point where death itself doesn't exist anymore. So he has all of these crazy things happening that he must do while trying to be on time for family dinner. That's what makes these characters so special, and that's why I love them personally. The absurdity is there, but it's brought back down with reality. It's grounded through all these human experiences, through interacting with the city and the people that they love. And while it might not seem like it, Spider-Man also fits the job description. I know he doesn't fit many. He's poor, and he'll be like that for all of eternity. But while we all know that Spider-Man is one of the faces of street-level heroes, just like Batman, he does jump between categories, and recently it's been a bit of a new addition, some might say. He has become a bit of a cosmic character, not just when he gets chosen by the Uniforce or Enigma Force to become Cosmic Spider-Man. And this all started off in the 1994 animated series, and here is the first introduction of something that will be known as the Spider-Verse, as Madam Web connected a bunch of different Spider-Man from different universes to fight a common threat. Many years later, it gets popularized even more through the hit video game Spider-Man Shattered Dimensions, where we get to play as The Amazing Spider-Man, Spider-Man Noir, Spider-Man 2099, and finally Ultimate Spider-Man, with each of these four Spider-Men going on separate journeys until the very end where they all come together to fight Mysterio. And then a couple years later, in 2014, the concept of the Spider-Verse gets introduced in the comics by Dan Slott. And from there has been a Spider-Verse event almost every year. We had Spider-Verse Volume 1 and 2 within the same year, then we had Spider-Geddon in 2018, Spider-Verse Volume 3 in 2019 to 2020, and spin-offs called Edge of the Spider-Verse, dealing with different Spider people within a team in 2022, 2023, and 2024. It's even gone so crazy that a whole Venomverse has been created to kinda glide off the coattails of Spider-Verse's success. And now we have a Spider-Verse vs. Venomverse comic that came out last year that was only 5 issues long. Yeah, it was a miniseries, but it tells you that no matter if it is good or bad, if it makes money, they're gonna keep pumping it out because it's an easy way to mine cash. But the greatest thing that spawned out of this whole Spider-Verse craze was the Spider-Verse movies themselves, and these films have really entrenched itself in pop culture. Nobody bats an eye if they see 20,000 Spider-Men on the same screen anymore. How is that even possible? It became normal. Isn't that crazy to say? But it also tells you that all of these variants and versions of Spider-Man have potential to become very loved. We don't have to only make stories about Peter Parker anymore. In fact, a Spider-Man Noir series came out this year with critical acclaim. It was done extremely well, very tastefully, and a lot of creative embers you can just see spark throughout the entire construction of that show. Honestly, it's only a matter of time before Spider-Man 2099 gets his own project and becomes even more loved than he already is. But this should tell you straight away that Spider-Man is now a cosmic street level character just as much as Superman is and the Flash. Despite, of course, those two being from DC, they are a lot different from Peter from a power level perspective. I would even say, as a predominantly street level character, it's very fascinating to see where he once started off as to where he is now. And to be quite frank, this was a journey that both Superman, Flash, and many other DC characters went through as they progressed from the Golden Age, to the Silver Age, to the Bronze Age, and now to the Modern Age. Spider-Man just had it in a very short amount of time, very successfully mind you, and in the Modern Age. It's very unprecedented, but it's also very cool. But yeah, guys, let me know down below, what do you think? Remember to like, comment, and subscribe. Once again, turn on post notifications so you know when a new video goes live, and let us know who are your favorite hybrid characters, either from the list that I gave you here or from your own mind. Put it down in the comments, and yeah, see you all later. Take care, deuces, peace.